Hey, what's up? Welcome to another review, and this is the Axios Flagship, and specifically, this is the Temeraire, sorry, version. It has this orange and I guess light teal color on the bezel, and a nice deep black dial. And these are from the brand Axios. I'm going to try to do a really quick review on this. Try to make it not as long as the other ones. Hopefully I can nail it okay and not go off on a tangent or something too much. So first let's get the specs out of the way. This is a 40 millimeter watch, case size rather, from Diagonal. And it may possibly be a little bit larger because of the coin edge on this bezel. It does protrude just ever slightly, but basically it's 40. And the thickness by itself, according to their specs, is 11.2. But if you count the box sapphire crystal on top, they say it's 13.2. It's hard to imagine this adds 2 millimeters, but I guess it's because of maybe at the very height in the center. Sorry about the focus. Where it domes up ever slightly, you can see. Maybe that's why. But overall, we're actually pretty low and thin, especially the way the case is cut. If you have a watch that's got a really heavy, basically a slab cut without any kind of beveling and I guess layering of the case. And a lot of times you got a thinner midsection, and then you got the bottom and the top. That helps break up the overall look of the watch and the weight of it. And you can see it on wrist later. Lug to lug is about 46 millimeters. There's used 20 millimeter lugs. Lug space right here. And this is using the Miyota 9015. Very great and reliable movements. I've had many, and they've all been very successful movements. They just run really accurately, pretty darn consistently, and they have a nice smooth sweep, and they will be affordable to service. And it's a great movement. I think people give it too much crap for whatever reason. I mean, it's kind of a citizen in-house movement. Miyota, I believe, is made by Citizen, and yeah, and they do some nice watches. Although most of their stuff these days is Echo Drive, but anyways, the Miyota movement is I like it a lot. It allows it's a thin movement comparable to Swissetta, like 2892 or something, somewhere around that range, and you can get the watch quite thin because of that. And what I was gonna say, well, this is a really cool version, second model from the brand Axios. The first one was a really big hit, the Ironclad. It's kind of a Submariner-ish homage, but they do their own thing. And I do find that this one is, I suppose, some people have mentioned these other references, like this takes inspiration from, but for me, I will agree that I feel like this has a bit of Zodiac Super Seawolf feel. There's kind of two kinds. There's the one that's very vintage looking, that's a little more conservative, that has the triangle kind of markers with a number, Arabic numerals cut into those numbers, right? And then there's the other Super Seawolves that have the much more colorful and bright and fun colors. And that's kind of where I think this lays, with this kind of color pop with this orange and teal. And of course that nice matching orange running seconds hands, as well as, if I can get this in focus, the little depth rating down there. And it does also, as people has mentioned, feel a bit like a Rattle Captain Cook. And if you look at those, I guess generally like the way the dial, the indexes are laid out is kind of similar in form and shape. The fact that they use a Bezel rice bracelet as well commonly is another thing. And yeah, and you can kind of see those influences, but it's kind of its own thing. So there are 4 different models or colorways for this flagship line. This is the Temeraire. I keep pronouncing it Temeraire. And there is a Victory, Defiance, and a Ajax, I believe, is the other one. And they are different colors. And see, there's one that's all blue. I think that's the Ajax. Defiance is the one that has that teal fume dial and a gray, like a kind of a light gray bezel, countdown bezel. And the Defiant is that the Victory? Did I just say Defiance? Then maybe the Victory is the one that's got the black gilt. I forget. You look it up online. But those are basically the 3 looks. But and they're pretty distinctive. They don't. It's not just a simple colorway change. I think they have enough different details in the way in that different color range that they really feel like 4 different watches. Yet they obviously will have the same design language with the shape of the indexes and everything else. But I like this one because I wanted a color, a pop of color. And to be honest, I have a shirt that has these colors in it that I thought would match great. But I haven't actually got a chance to pair it yet. But yeah, I think overall this is actually pretty well built. And the price is reasonable. The bracelet is very comfortable. It's very fully articulate. As most people that have experienced Bezel rights will say, it's a good wearing type of bracelet on wrist, very comfortable, and it just matches the old school look. And the watch does come in watch box that's actually collapsible, as well as like this watch pouch. I guess it's leather, if not leatherette, and it's got like a metal warranty card, much like its sister brand Zelos does. So yeah, I think the guys that do this are related to Zelos in some way. Partners, maybe in the brand Zelos, and they kind of branched off, or I forget the exact story, but anyways, so you can expect the same kind of quality and value in this brand as what you might expect from Zelos, and they've been doing very, very well. I find Zelos, just quickly to mention, to be like a brand that kind of focuses on more modern and very original designs. Definitely modern and more maybe avant-garde, cutting edge in some of their designs. Quite a number of them, and yeah, it's really nice. And then on the other scale here, or other side, with Axios, they seem to, with like you look at their ironclad and this one so far, those 2 models, they seem to be more vintage inspired, I would say. Still, I think overall fairly original design, slightly more derivative compared to Zelos, but still nothing that's really, I would say, straight up, copycat. I'll show you this on wrist. And I was going to say it also comes with a Tropic strap. It's not bad. It's all right. It's got a sign buckle. Tried it on this. Obviously, it works really well. But I am not going to swap it out because, this thing is kind of a strap monster, but it really works great on this beads of rice. And it's got nice, it's not mayo where they might stick out. I don't think any beads of rice does that, but since they're basically kind of like female links, then they drop down really nicely. So basically, I did, I taped this back up because I was about to put this online, but we can quickly undo that. It's not a big deal. Oh, and here, since I got this open, you can see the, again, let me get this in focus. A nice detailed, you know, I guess old style battleship. And I think this is specifically the, supposed to be the Victory or the Defiance. But who knows? I think most of those ships back in those days basically look the same. These are limited number editions since I'm on the back, and they are numbered like right up here for this one. This one, I believe, has the fewest amount of production numbers. As you see, it's 100, and this is 86 out of 100. And the other ones are a little bit more, I forget, I think they're more like 150 for the Defiance and Victory. And the Ajax, which I believe is the blue one, should be a little bit higher, like 180 or even 200. So this is probably maybe the rarest of the bunch, and that's kind of why. Actually, it didn't matter to me so much, but it's kind of a bonus that it's also a little bit more rare, I suppose, example than some of the other ones. So let's get this on wrist real quick, and on my 6.875-inch wrist. But again, 46 lug to lug, and a nice downturn is going to fit on many wrists very well. Let me try to back off a bit. You can see I tend to wear my wrists the way they're shaped. I tend to wear it right. I try to get this right at the middle of they call this the knuckle, but whatever the wrist bone is. And that's where I like to sit. I don't like to sit forward of that, covering it. It's just, that's too close, and most crowns would tend to poke me in the back of the wrist. And it makes my wrist look thinner too. I don't have the widest or thickest wrist, but and if you're right, I don't try to go far too back, then I don't know. This feels weird a little bit, and it's just too much wrist exposed. It's a little bit too much. So for me, this is a good mid spot. And you can see, especially in person, you may find that this looks like it wears smaller than a 40 millimeters, maybe even more like a 39, I think, just because I think the bezel to dial ratio, and the dial is kind of on the smaller side. But yeah, I don't mind. I prefer to wear a little bit smaller, but see down the wrist, this curves naturally down, not much wrist gap at all. And again, that undercut and the way the mid case is thin really helps make it looking like nice and flat. And there's a bit of a taper on this too. I think it's probably 20 down to 18 right down here, and then it goes up a bit obviously on the clasp, but no big deal. What I was gonna say, yeah, this has got a nice detailed deep black dial. It was just nice. You can see that, kind of glossy, and it's got nice applied markers. It's using BGW9 in the bezel, as well as those thin little lines I believe are made of BGW9, as well as on the index at the very tip. You can see how it's divided. The tip has a little bit of a section that's BGW9, and the rest of it is C3X1, so it glows green instead of blue on the BGW9. So you got a nice bicolor Lume application, and I'll definitely get a, sorry, switch my leg position. I definitely get a Lume shot before I sign out of here. 120 click bezel. It's definitely a pretty good, well-made bezel, because it just clicks into place, and there's really, I'm moving the watch, but there's really no play. That's how no play this is. If I move, kind of just try to move it, it's moving the watch. If you really had play, you'd probably see that better. And so, and everything lines up perfectly. See? And what else can I say? just got good grip and just enough of it, even though it's thin. And some features I like about this watch. Again, good grip on this. Overall, good quality. The motor movement in here is very, it's tuned pretty nicely. It's been very accurate on my example. I think, pretty sure I don't get much more than +2, maybe +4 seconds a day. And it just holds very well. And the window's nice and clear. It's got a nice frame around it. And even got a little bit of like white around there. Like that silver on the very outer edge. And then when it goes down a little bit, you see a little bit of a white edge. And there's some things I want to talk about, like maybe it could be improved or changed up a little bit. But I think I like the colorway, just this deep black against this bright color of orange and teal. It makes it pop, and it's a fun color. You know, it almost looks like it was possibly a Pepsi bezel, like when it was new. It was definitely new, with red and perhaps a blue part, and then over time, tropicalization, fade. Lost some of its pigments, and then it turned into an orange and a teal instead. You can kind of imagine that, but that's not actually what happened. But that's what I kind of imagine, that it wasn't originally orange and teal, that maybe it was blue and red, but just kind of now it's faded to this color. Just to help in my head kind of tie in that visual, vintage kind of idea behind this design and look. What else can I say? Some people might think that the numbers maybe should have been in black, and that may be too faint and hard to read. And I'd be lying to say that wasn't sort of true, but you see in the Lume shot, I think this works. And it's actually more visible in the Lume. And also, I think, I don't know, it kind of keeps it cleaner if you don't have that high contrast on the bezel. If it was black and you actually see the numbers and the markings a lot cleaner, it would just be busier, you know what I mean? And to be honest, it's not that hard. You got a section of this orange and the rest here, and you know what this means. It's 15 minutes, and it's plenty enough information here to gauge when you set the time, like, the timing the event. Let's see, like somewhere, whoops, I'll pass the hand. Go back around. The hands goes right here. Okay, that's about 5. Even if you don't see, depending on the distance you are, if you don't see that clear, you can basically make out what it is. If that hand goes here, this end, you kind of know that, it's 30 minutes have gone over, and so forth. So I think with us watch people with enough watch wearing experience know what a bezel is generally measured at for timing, and you don't need that much information to get a good estimate of how much time has passed, right? And let's see here. Maybe I should quickly get into a Lume shot, and then we'll go into the positive, negatives, and close out. Hang on a second, let me pause this. Okay, here we go. So, let's focus. You can see this is how it looks like when it's zoomed up. Excuse me, mistake. Actually, the only BGW9 is actually on the tips, and I hit this again. For some reason I thought the bezel was blue, but I guess it is. Should be C3X1. But if you look closely, you can see that the little indexes between the main hours, right? The small minute markers are loomed up very faintly. They probably go out pretty quick. There's not that much. It's a very thin application. But just know that, yeah, I mean, that's actually, I believe that's actually a little bit of blue in between. That's how it looks like. Got pretty good orientation because you know that the 6 o'clock with the date is blank. And so you know where 12 is, obviously, and the rest of it. So legibility is pretty good. Offhand, I'd say, what was I going to say? Yeah, this does last pretty long throughout the night. Probably the bezel is the first thing to fade out because it's pretty relatively thin, you know, markings and numbers. Even if I can tell that they're still up, and you know, I think about it, I think I can still kind of make it out. It's you know, you're not going to really get any practical use out of it for long in the dark with the bezel, that is. So it's not meant for necessarily the most serious dive applications, but it looks good nonetheless. So let's try to get into some of the negatives or some things that I might change about this. And you see, and actually you can see around the indexes and the markings on the bezel, and it goes out quickly because of my camera on my phone adjusts, but you can see there's a bit of a halo around, especially on the 45 and so, and probably like go back down to the 30 and 15, you'll see those. See, and then also all the markings. There's a bit of a kind of a halo effect around everything on the bezel, and I don't understand why they did it like that. But you don't get it up here in the orange quadrant. Up there, it only happens in the blue part or the teal part. So I don't know why they couldn't have just made it all the same. I think as it is, it looks a little bit not as clean as it could be. Obviously, you'd want it just to be just like on the orange part between 0 to 15, just the indexes. You don't need that extra halo effect. Also, as you recall, I mentioned that the date window had like a white kind of outline around it under, I guess that's smaller than the silver frame applied around it. And it would have been cool because since that part of it, you can see it in this black light, you know, see that frame, that white frame around the 6, the date window. If that was also loomed up too with something, probably the C3, the green. And even though you may not be able to probably read the date, and it's not necessarily to read the date in the dark, I think it would have added a nice little feature just to have that still highlighted in the dark with some lume. Just thinking, I think like the guys that make Avalon notice, not the Avalon, but I think one of their, is it the Contrail or is it the other one? One of the versions, kind of a later one, they actually loomed the date window around it, the frame. So I think they could have done it something similar here with Axios. So in terms of lume, it's good lume, but I think the application on the teal part of it could have been cleaner. I don't understand why they would need that halo and that little blockiness around 45, 30, and actually even half of the arrow at the top, if you can kind of make that out. So that's one thing. Let me turn the lights back on. So I'm going to get into a few more. If you hear some noises in the background, that's my dog. Other things that I might like to see besides the lume and that frame being maybe loomed as well. The only thing I can think of is I think although this clicks into place really well with no play, and it does it with pretty good ease. Something about this, and some other reviewers have mentioned this, I think the action of the bezel could be refined. For me, it's something about it is not as pleasurable as the other watches I had, like the way my Seiko bezel rotates, or even my Hellsin or Zin, but that's on a ball bearing. The Zin 104, that is. it's got this ever slightly feel of like friction or some kind of slight grittiness to it underneath. Like when I'm turning, you can just kind of make it out. And it's just feels like there's extra friction that's in the bezel as you're turning it. That, I don't know, could be smoothed out, like more lubricants or something like that. It feels like, to me, it feels like it almost has a little lack of lubrication inside the bezel. By no means is it hard, but it just feels like there's some unnecessary feeling of friction or grittiness to it. It's very slight, but these are the little details that I pick up and notice, at least in this example. And I think others who have had this have mentioned something similar about the feel or the action of this not being the best in that terms. Would I change the markings to something darker? I don't think it's necessary. As long as the main thing is they could keep this and they can clean up the loom behind this part of it. I don't know why these all have a halo, but they do. The other thing is, I don't think there's anything else I would really mess with. It's a really good size and everything, and the braces is good. The things I like about it are the shape, the general, at least this color scheme, nice applied markers. Even though, and this crystal is actually quite nice. I think it's like a box sapphire with an ever slight dome to it, and I believe it is double dome because um, there isn't that much distortion even at extreme angles. You can read it really well. You can see, there's some that are just straight in the bottom, maybe domed, or vice versa. Somehow, you'll definitely get like distortion as you don't have to go this far down to get it. So it's actually very legible from many angles. Whoops, sorry. Off the camera. But I do, going back to the crystal, I do like the fact that if you look at it, it's got this kind of ring look around it. And I don't know, it looks like it could be acrylic. It's not, it's a crystal, it's sapphire, but I think that's a cool, kind of a nice effect and gives it that kind of vintage vibe as well. I mean, to make it kind of, doesn't kind of feel like it's got this bit of a halo around it that makes it look kind of plastic like, and so especially so how clear it is too. So that's a nice feature there. The Fume dial version is pretty nice, but I don't know why I'm not into. I know this has a teal bezel, but like something about teal dial, it looks visually good, but it's not something I personally gravitate towards. I generally like especially if it's a radiant kind of bluish color that has less green in it, and teal definitely will have some green in it. I can handle it in this bezel for some reason, but in the deep dial, I don't know why. It's something I don't gravitate towards. Oh, and some people mentioned this crown is a little bit on the small side. Keeps out of the way, but because the grip on... Yeah, I turned off the video by accident when I knocked the camera. Anyways, the crown. A little bit, there's not a lot of deep knurling, I guess, texture on this grip here. It's relatively smooth for how much, these coinage or texture that's around it is. So if you got fat thumbs or something, I don't consider my fingers to be that big. It's still kind of small and fiddly to try to work. And the fact that this bezel comes out a little bit is just enough to give a little extra bit of obstruction for your thumbs to try to get around as you're undoing this. And even when you're pop this up for a second, even when you're winding, it's pretty close to this, and so you don't grip at the very edge, and it's not super grippy crown anyway, so you try to get as much purchase on it, so when you wind it, your thumbs will generally kind of graze this as you're turning it most of the time. Maybe you go this more, but then yeah, see, knuckles or something. This will kind of hit this most likely. So that's probably another thing I'd probably figure out a way to work on. Maybe at least improving the grip on it, and that might help out with having to fully grip it. It's deep enough grooves, you can kind of almost get your grip out more and grip it along the edge. The movement's good. I don't have any problem with Miota. And does it have that sound? And throw wobble, I don't really get a heavy wobble, but I know it's there. You can hear that too. But in general, I mean, your wrists aren't going to be that close to your head, and even so, I don't know. I'm not bothered by it. I've lived with this sound for a lot of times that I've owned Miota watches with Miota movements, so it's all good. It's just the fact that these movements run really great, and that does make me happy. You don't want a shoddy watch that's not keeping good time, because otherwise, it's almost like, what's the point, right? Oh, the dial was clean. I like the fact that it's just the logo up here. I do feel that maybe, just maybe, the flagship text in the these are particularly small. I think you don't need it to dominate, but I do think it could be a little bit larger. Because it is pretty small in comparison to the rest of the dial. You can see the distance. I mean, it's just legible, but for a lot of times it looks like just almost like two lines, and not necessarily lines of text, because it's that small, especially if your hand's a bit away. I think to have it just a little bit larger, maybe come out, scale it proportionally, but have it come out to be not as wide as these markers here, but somewhere like in between the middle, and that, just a little bit more. Maybe it could come out to here a little bit, but yeah, it does feel oddly particularly small. This size of font and text that they're using down here. But that's pretty much about it. Just did a great job on the brushing and a little bit of high polish, and the bracelet's really nice. And I think that should be about it. So much for keeping this short, but just gotta get this out there. I definitely recommend this watch. They still have some in stock, but not many. So if you like this particular colorway, I suggest you go for it. I think it's a great alternative to, say, some people say Captain Rado Captain Cook. For me, it was kind of an alternative to Zodiac Super Seawolf. The ones that have those bright, they call them the watermelon color, which this could be kind of like, and some other ones too, like, not to say they're not worth it, the Zodiacs, but they're usually over pretty close to 1,000, maybe just over that, I think. And for something a lot less, I think these ones do around $599 or so, right? Pretty close to right about 600 basically. It's not bad to give you much of that feel with the colors and the general style and everything. Maybe not so much in this case, but from afar at an angle, it kind of gives you that look and feel of a very colorful Zodiac Super Seawolf, mixed with a little bit of, I guess, Captain Kirk DNA. So I think that's it. Anyways, thanks for watching, and hopefully I get time to do more of these in the near future again. I've been so busy, just even to get those watch you strapping videos out, which are pretty short. But yeah, I'm just trying to really hammer these out when I can. So excuse the unprofessional, background or whatever. But I do these whenever I get a chance. And that will be now. Thanks. Bye.